بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, to the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our unit 1 has come to a completion. Today we shall start unit 2. So today is lesson 1 from unit 2. The topic is cleanliness, and we have to discuss the three following points. Number 1, the importance of cleanliness. Number 2, punishments for negligence. And number 3, types of pacificators: wudu, ghusl, and tayammum. So first and foremost, let us discuss the definition of tahara. The linguistic meaning the dictionary meaning of tahara is cleanliness. The fiqhi meaning is to acquire cleanliness and purity from major and minor impurities, which are known as hadith and najasa. So hadith asghar and hadith akbar, and all types of najasa and impurities. The shari'i meaning of tahara has 2 levels. Level 1, tahara and purity from disbelief, ascribing partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and wrong beliefs. And the second level is tahara from and purity from disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in the terminology of the Quran and Hadith, either the fiqhi definition is used, or both of the shari definitions are used. Because the word cleanliness is a very broad word, which doesn't give the full meaning unless it's understood with the help of the Quran and Hadith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the glorious Quran says, Inna Allah yuhibbu at-tawwabin wa yuhibbu al-mutatahhirin. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who turn to Him, those who repent, and those who acquire purity. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, فِيهِ رِجَالٌ يُحِبُّونَ أَن يَتَطَهَّرُوا وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُطَّهِّرِينَ. That there are such people who like to become fully pure and clean. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves such people. When this verse was revealed, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam called for the Ansari companions radiyallahu ta'ala, and he said that, O Ansari companions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed this verse in respect to yourselves. So please tell me what you are doing in terms of cleanliness. So they said that, O Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when we perform salah, we make wudu, we bathe and purify ourselves from major impurities, janaba, and when we relieve ourselves, not only do we use soil, but we use water. So the Prophet ﷺ said, this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised you. Now keep in mind, during the days and during the time of Rasulullah ﷺ, soil used to be used, and in today's day and age, toilet paper is used. How many types of tahara are there? So there are three types of tahara. Number one, purity in terms of beliefs. So one's beliefs have to be pure, in line with the beliefs of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'at, in line with the beliefs of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. Number two, purity of the outer self. So the body, clothing, the place, especially when a person praises salah. And number three, purity of the inner self. That means purifying the heart from all the spiritual illnesses, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram. Jealousy, pride, excessive love for the world, which leads a person to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Impatience, ingratitude, not being satisfied and not being happy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decree and decisions, etc., etc., etc. So these three types, they come under the category of those types which tahara and purity and cleanliness is needed. The Prophet ﷺ has mentioned a hadith, "At-tuhuru shatrul iman," that purity is half of iman. This is a very famous hadith, and a hadith which many of us have heard many a times. So purity, cleanliness is half of iman. What correlation does purity have with iman? That it is half of iman. So before I go into the explanation, let us understand that the word at-tuhud, according to majority of the commentators of hadith, refers to the usage of water purifying oneself. And iman means one's belief. The word Islam, in the terminology of the Quran and Hadith, refers to one's actions. And the word iman refers to one's beliefs. Although in our day-to-day language, they're both used interchangeably. That means many a times we use the word iman in place of Islam, and we use the word Islam in place of iman. We say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted him the blessing of Islam. Allah has granted him the blessing of iman. He is a Muslim. He is a mu'min. But in the terminology of the Quran and Hadith, iman refers to one's beliefs, believing in Allah, believing in His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam being the last and final messenger, believing in His angels, believing in His books, believing in the final day, believing in life after death, believing in destiny, that good and bad is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Islam refers to the actions. Worship, dealings, transactions, etiquettes, etc., etc., etc. So purity is half of iman. So one explanation given for this hadith is that when a person accepts iman, there's two aspects. One aspect is the small sins, which are known as the minor sins, the saghir. And the other concept is known as the kabair, the major and big sins. So when a person accepts iman, both kabair, major and minor sins, are forgiven. In other words, all of his sins are forgiven when he accepts iman and Islam. And when a person performs purity, when he makes wudu, then his saghayir, his minor sins, are wiped away. So from this perspective, purity is half of iman. In order for a person to have his kabair and major sins erased, he must make sincere tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he must fulfill all of those conditions which have been mentioned by the ulama ikram. which are to make a firm resolve that he will never ever do that action again. Stop that action. And if that results, or if that has any connection with the rights of the people, then he must make amends for that violation. So let's assume a person has taken a debt from someone and he hasn't paid him back. So merely seeking forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is insufficient. Rather, first he must go to that person whose right he has violated and either seek forgiveness or compensate for that right which he's violated. And then ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness as well. Whereas the saghair, the minor sins, are automatically washed away and erased by performing wudu. So purity is half of iman. This is one explanation. Another explanation given by Imam Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that iman consists of two aspects. The first aspect is takhliya, and the second aspect is tahliya. Takhliya means to remove, and tahliya means to adorn. So this hadith is referring to takhliya, that means to remove. Remove what? Remove wrong ideologies, remove impure thoughts, remove impure beliefs, remove any exterior and outer impurity, remove any interior impurity, remove any sinful actions which are found in a person's life. So this is the meaning of takhliya, to remove. And then tahliya, to adorn oneself with good ideologies, good Islamic beliefs, to adorn oneself with the outer purity, to adorn oneself with those qualities which a person needs to have in his heart. So from this perspective, purity is half of iman, because it removes all of these impurities. Just as I mentioned before, tahara has three types. Another very important point to remember, and that is tahara, just taharat-e zahiri, or taharat-e zahiriya, and taharat-e batiniya. The zahiri and external purity is given importance, but taharat-e batini, internal purity and internal cleanliness, is seldomly given the same importance which is given to the exterior self. And the ulama ikram have mentioned, in light of the Quran and Hadith, that this command of removing these impure traits in the heart is necessary. It's farad. It's compulsory, mandatory. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. That person has become successful who has purified his heart. And among the three major works with which a Nabi is sent, one of those major works is تزكية. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. So just as it was mentioned before, the dictionary meaning of tahara is cleanliness. The fiqhi definition is cleanliness from hadith and najasa. And the shari'i meaning is cleanliness from wrong beliefs and disobediences of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we will find a hadith regarding every single topic in the books of hadith. Let us just discuss the outer tahara and the exterior tahara at the moment. Islam is a perfect religion and a complete religion. And prior to Islam's advent, the concept of tahara, the concept of purity and cleanliness, this concept did not exist among other nations. Rather, Islam taught a person to bring all of these beautiful teachings which relate to a person's hygiene, cleanliness into his life, through which his life then functions like a normal individual. If we go back in history, approximately 500, 600 years ago, we will see that many non-Muslim nations, they never ever would adhere to the tahara and cleanliness which Muslims adhere to in the present day. Rather, the Roman Pope, he had built religious courts, and it was a sin for the Christians to adopt any type of cleanliness. It was sinful for them to bathe. And anyone who would be caught bathing, he would be put through that religious court system, and he would be tried and punished. And approximately 2,000 people were arrested, caught, punished, and set on fire just for maintaining cleanliness. Because cleanliness in those days was a sinful activity, and it was something which was not among the norm of society. And approximately 70,000 people were locked up in jail just for adhering to cleanliness and tahara. Among the Hindu nation, again, cleanliness was not adopted. And one of the past prime ministers, I believe his name is Marar Desai, something along that nature, Marar Desai. So his statement was published in one of the Indian newspapers that on a daily basis, he used to drink his own urine. Among the Sikh nation, this is among their religious teachings. They must grow their hair. And there's no need to cut that hair. That's why many of our Sikhs, or the Sikh community, those who are still religious and follow the fundamental religion, they have long hair. So from their religious perspective, it is haram, it is impermissible for them to cut their hair. Now, our Islam is complete. When Islam came, Islam gave us a complete mandate and a complete guideline. Right from when a person wakes up all the way until he goes to sleep. And it covers every single aspect of his life. When a person wakes up, he's instructed by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that when one of you wake up, before placing his hands into a basin, let him wash his hands. Because in those days, they didn't have sinks and the facilities that we have available for us today. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was his practice and this was his teaching that when a person sleeps and he wakes up, the first thing that he should do is wash his hands before he places his hands into the basin. Because none of you know where his hands spent the night. This means when a person goes to sleep, perhaps his hands may have made contact with some kind of impurities. And if this is the case, when he wakes up, that impurity may have dried, and he may have placed his hands inside the basin, the same basin where he makes wudu and ghusl, and if he was to do that, then the water would become impure. So before he places his hands inside the basin to make wudu, he should wash his hands and then continue with his wudu or ghusl. Thereafter, the Prophet ﷺ taught us the method of wudu. So every single day, 5 times a day, a Muslim and a believer, he has to adhere to all the acts of wudu. And if we look very carefully at these acts, we will see that these are the best acts for cleanliness and hygiene. Washing the hands. How important it is to wash the hands, people discovered this concept was discovered, or it was given importance to, during the era of COVID. So our deen is not and was not restricted to the COVID era. Our deen is complete and comprehensive. 1440 some years ago, the Prophet ﷺ has instructed us to wash our hands during wudu, to wash our hands before eating, to wash our hands after eating. On a side note, many people, they go to the extremes. They will say that they must wash their hands even when touching doorknobs, even when leaving washrooms which belong to non-Muslims. So let's assume a person goes to a public washroom, and some people make this argument that because employees and people, they don't wash their hands, and that could be true. But remember one thing, the Sharia has fixed principles. The Sharia is not based on assumption. The Sharia is not based on doubts. So if a person would like to wash his hands when leaving public spaces, that's up to his personal discretion. It's not necessary for him from the aspect of the Sharia. But it's the Sunnah practice to wash his hands before and after eating and whilst making wudu. So when a person makes wudu, he is reminded to rinse his mouth. Again, a lot of bacteria lies in the mouth, and that bacteria, when it goes into the digestive tract and enters into a person's stomach, that causes illnesses and that causes diseases. We're instructed to rinse the nose. We're instructed to wash our faces. So again, washing the faces, washing the feet, washing the organs of the body, this was considered as wrong among the Christians in ancient times. And rather, certain Christian monks, certain Christian priests, they have made these statements that for 70 years, for 50 years, for my entire life, I've never washed my face, I've never washed my feet. And this was considered the norm of that time. So Islam is a very comprehensive way of life. It's a comprehensive system. It doesn't go and it doesn't encourage all of these wrong traits. Now, in today's day and age, the cleanliness which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught to the Muslims, this cleanliness was actually taken from Islam, and now non-Muslims are using the same cleanliness. However, there's a big difference even in today's day and age. And this difference can be highlighted through an example. That once my respected teacher, Sheikh Maulana Zubair Kula Sahib, Damat Barakatum, he gave us this beautiful example. He said there was a Muslim child who was studying in a non-Muslim school. So all of his classmates were non-Muslims, his teacher were non-Muslims. So the children used to laugh at this Muslim boy because they discovered that he used to carry a jug with him, and that jug would be used when he would go to the washroom. So they used to laugh at him. So this boy quietly got up, went to the front of the classroom, took the chalk, I don't think they have chalkboards anymore. He took the chalk and he drew a circle. And he drew a line and split up that circle. Then he smeared that circle with his chalk, and he took a wet paper towel and he cleaned half of that circle. So it was completely clean because it was a wet paper towel. And then he took a chalk brush and he cleaned or tried to clean the other half. So there was a noticeable difference between both sides. Then he looked towards his classmates and he said, "This is my example." The example of the side which was completely pure and clean. And then he said to the children, "This is your example, the other side, which was partially cleaned and not fully cleaned." So even in today's day and age, Muslims, they use water, they use toilet paper to clean themselves. And this type of, or this care and consideration is not found among non-Muslims. Yet Muslims will praise non-Muslims in respect to their outer cleanliness. So we must understand that the cleanliness which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted the Muslims through Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this cleanliness and this tahara cannot be matched. So wudu. Thereafter, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instructed us to cut our nails at least once a week. And there's a sunnah method to cut the nails. Again, this is a part of that cleanliness. We've been instructed to trim the mustache. And the beard, for the beard to exceed 1 fist length, is against the sunnah method of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So other nations, they will also have beards, but their beards will be extremely lengthened. And according to Islam, to have the beard 1 fist length is sunnah. And to cut it after that is sunnah. To allow it to lengthen, just as other nations do, is against the sunnah teaching of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Likewise, to remove any unwanted hair from the body, to remove pubic hair is sunnah. To remove the hair under the armpits is sunnah. And the same care is not found with other nations and other communities. Inna Allah yuhibbu at-tawwabin wa yuhibbul mutatahhirin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who are pure. And then there's a whole set of guidelines that a person needs to maintain when he goes to the washroom. And it can be summed up in 2 words, istinja and istibara. This means that when a person releases himself, he must make sure that no drop of urine continues to be expelled from his body after he has finished. In respect to urine droplets, once the Prophet ﷺ, he was passing by 2 graves. And he said to his companions, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, that these 2 people are being punished. And in respect to the first person, he's being punished because he was not careful in respect to urine droplets. And in respect to the second person, he would engage in namima. That means he would, when hearing a conversation, would take some points from this conversation and pass it on to other individuals with the intention of causing fights. So istibra is necessary, because if a person quickly goes to the washroom, releases himself, and immediately stands up and he performs wudu, so many a times istibra has not been completed. This means, although he may not feel it, it takes time for the urine droplets to stop. And my respected teacher gives a beautiful example. He says, when a person turns a water tap on to get a glass of water, and then he turns that tap off, water will still continue to drop for a few seconds. After 5, 6, 7 seconds, water will now stop completely. So in the same manner, when males use a washroom, it takes time for a person's system to flush itself and for the urine droplets to completely stop. Therefore, it's advised that when a person relieves himself, he spends at least 4 to 5 minutes, everyone's situation is different, and he uses tissue paper, and he allows the tissue paper to absorb all the urine droplets, and once he's convinced that the system has flushed itself, and now there are no more urine droplets, then he should stand up and make wudu. Because by making wudu, immediately, if urine droplets continue, neither will his wudu be valid, and neither will his salah be valid. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to adhere to the beautiful teachings of Islam and the Sharia, and let us appreciate these teachings. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين صدق الله العظيم.